there's a stuck place that every single one of us will end up in, often multiple times in our lives, when we're wondering what's next, when we're worried that we've made wrong choices, we're worried that we will continue to make wrong choices because we don't know which path to go down, when we know that our life is not what it currently should be, or doesn't look like what it currently is, or shouldn't be what it currently is, or that you're meant for bigger, grander things, except life feels small and constrained right now, where you know that there are changes that you need to make because what's been happening isn't working, but you don't know which changes to make or which path to go down or where to begin. Like, that's a common stuck place that every single one of us ends up in. And I know that, like, all of us want the quick solve there of just give me the answer of what direction do I want to go in. And there's an element of experimentation in that if you just want to try things and throw a bunch of shit at the wall, like, you can. But there's another element, which is doing the deep work. It doesn't have to take long, but it is the deep work of asking, what do you think you're on the planet for? What is your purpose? What is your reason for being, aka purpose? What do you feel like? What problems do you feel like you're so deeply connected to that you really want to solve? What does a meaningful existence entail for you? What does a joyful, loving life entail for you? Who are the people you want in your life? Um, like, these are all starting points to answer that question. The excavation of, like, when you're on that deathbed, like, what will you have wanted to see, do, experience? What are the qualities of the life you want to have lived? These are all questions we can ask ourselves along that way of getting unstuck, because it's inevitable that we will get there. Like, there's no reason that any one of us should know where our life is going at all times. You're going to have to do the questioning because that's where the answers come from. And then we experiment and test and see what works. And then you go again. You come up with a new hypothesis. And then you test again. And it just keeps going from there. But what can reduce and diminish the future feelings of stuckness is if you come up with better hypotheses. If you take more information to formulate your hypothesis of what to even test. Because so often we have a thought and then we're like, oh, let's try that, without giving it a lot more thought around whether that is the right thing to try for you. There are so many inputs that are available to us, like some of the questions I just suggested, that allow you to start to answer that question for yourself. And you can end up with hundreds of inputs to inform your hypothesis. And in the same way we did in, like, I don't know, junior high when we were learning the scientific method, to come up with a good hypothesis, you have to take in the circumstances. You have to take in the context of your situation. You have to look around you. You have to research and understand, like, the factors that impact the problem. And if you have the first idea of, like, oh, maybe it's X. Maybe X is why A is happening. It's like, well, have you thought about, yes, X is why A is happening, but there's also E and F and S and R and D. But if you're just like, oh, no, but it's X, I'm just going to test X. Then you run off and test X and you're like, oh, fuck, like, why didn't that work out? You don't have other inputs to tweak because you just ran with X. You just know that X isn't it. Well, if you factored in all these other things, then you have more of a sound hypothesis that considered more factors to go forward with. So I think for a lot of people, like, something I did, I was like, I love sports, so I should work in sports. I love basketball, so I should work in basketball. But I didn't know what working in basketball meant. I didn't understand like there's a whole business of sport, but my child brain was like, I love basketball, work in basketball. But I also knew a whole bunch of other things about myself that I hadn't considered at the time. I love like building deep connections with people and understanding what makes them tick. I love understanding like their motivations so that I can connect it to our collective motivations. I love kind of building or leveraging like people's emotions in sports and telling those kinds of stories around those emotions. And so if I had considered more of this, I'm like, oh shit, I should have considered broadcasting, like sports production, actually going into producing sporting events or shows. But instead, I just thought basketball. So I just applied to the NBA and like took the first job they gave me. I was very lucky they got a job, but just took the first job they gave me. And didn't think much of it. I was just like, oh, great, I'm at the NBA. This is incredible. And within 2 years, I was like, oh my God, I don't want to be here. This is not it. But it could have been a very different experience if I had gone to sport production. Maybe I would have loved it there. Maybe I would have loved like the energy of like moving in a constant way instead of sitting at a desk. Maybe I would have really enjoyed, and that is something I enjoy, like not being chained to a desk. I love, the dynamic like variability of like every event being a different outcome and there being different storylines to chase. And it's something that I, think about to this day. I'm like, fuck, like why didn't I think more at depth about what I wanted? But with every iteration, we get to try again. And so if you're in that stuck place and wondering where to begin, think much more macro. Like, what's the life you want to live? What does it feel like? What are the experiences you want to have? What are the passions that you have? Before trying to answer the specific what's next for your life, whether in the realm of work or love or friendship or home or money, think macro and break it down from there. Because once you understand the macro picture, you can understand how everything is interconnected and how they're intertwined. And you get a holistic picture from which then you can look at, okay, then how does this part that I'm wondering what's next on or that I'm stuck on, how does that part fit in? If it's relational, like how do I want my relationships to be? Who are the people I want in my life? If it's professional and work and business, it's like, well, what skills do I want to use? What problems do I like to solve? What topics do I love to engage in? What impact do I want to have? Like, but understanding the foundation from which you're building, which is your life, everything starts from there. And so we'll come back to that feeling again of being like, fuck, what do I do next? I'm feeling a little lost, confused, directionless, a little lost in ourselves, maybe unsure of who we even are, wanting bigger things for ourselves. To me, it always comes back to, well, let's start with the life I want to be living. Let's start with what life I will have been proud to have lived once that either bus takes me or I die in my sleep. Because everything, all the information is there. I promise. Because no one else has the information. All of it is within us. And so I'd start with the question of, what does a meaningful life look like to you? And get as detailed as you possibly can. And start to formulate your hypothesis of what's next for you from there.